completely different, right?
Yeah.
I just want to correct me if I'm wrong, David, but I think he meant if you have lands, let's say before you've vested, if you have lands that you wanted to keep in the same, respect as you'd want to keep that car, would you do the same and give that, give that land, give it up to a friend or whatever,
For sure.
and then you claim it back after? I think that's what he meant. So just to clarify, you can still do that with the land as long as you give it up before, obviously, you've vested and you've got your confirmation. Because what William was confusing was there is once you are out and you are vested and you've got your own lands, etc., for you to start playing games with lands, then you're going to get yourself into an agreement with a subject of the Queen or the King.
Perfect. Yeah.
Where the problems come.
Yeah. Good.
Yes, but if let's say you had 500 acres right now that you've had in your family forever and it means a lot to you, right? Because you want lands where you can self-sustain, right? If you're thinking that your house that's in the middle of the city, that you're going to sell that to somebody else and then come back and claim it, the cities are it's not going to happen. It can happen, but you're basically going to be putting yourself in a position where that monkey video where you're trying to go up the ladder and all those people that are living around you aren't allowed to go up that ladder. Look at how Facebook is right now. When you say that there really is true freedom in these things, a lot of people are coming to attack you just because of their belief that there's no such thing. You see what I'm getting at? So do you really want to put yourself inside that cage? Because those cities are cages, right? So picking what land you're going to vest, I suggest that you really understand what all this is before you pick your lands which to vest, because if you do pick a house in the city, once you start driving around without insurance and all these other things and you're doing all these things and they're calling the police on you because right? Because other people are not allowed to do these things. It's going to be so much headache. Like, the whole point of this is to be getting away from that bullshit, not trying to mix the two. And it even says that in law, that you can't mix the two. They are yin and yang. They're not mixable. So I would really think it over if you're thinking of trying to take a house inside a city or something.
Oh no, I don't have that
just
thought
because
at
of
all.
all those. But yeah, if you had lands that you could self-sustain on and everything else, yes. Because don't forget, let's say you did have 500 acres of lands, and I had this understanding and everything else, but I wasn't ready to vest yet, and you asked me, okay, well, here, how about I sell you these lands for $1, my land for $1, and then I'm going to vest, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to claim them from you. That will be fine with me as long as I understand everything in the system, everything that's going on here. Because when you, because all this is all done at the same time. Vesting your corporate person and your lands are done at pretty much the exact same time through the writ of entry. So,
hey, is that the correct language?
Basically,
vesting your corporate person.
Yes, because they're both a trust. There's a vested interest in both. You have the right to both of them as long as you do a certain thing. Okay. Right? Because you got to remember, in English law, there is no injury unless you're going to make claim for that injury. Right? If I come and punch you in the face, no one's going to take me to court unless you go and take me to court and say, right, that I punched you in the face and you want remedy. Right? There's no magical court fairy out there that takes people to court for us. Right? So we have to realize that's the very first thing in English law, that there is no remedy unless you're going to do something to get it. And that's the contingency that they're talking about in reversion. Right? That you actually have to do something. You just can't sit on your ass and expect this to happen for you. right? You have to do it yourself, right? And that's also why when we get into this jurisdiction about you moving your jurisdictions, right? Because you got yourself into this jurisdiction by your agreement. So by you terminating those agreements in a justifiable manner, the way that that agreement states, you're not injuring anybody. And nobody's injuring you, right? So when we look at it that way, right? So you can remove that agreement. So now you've removed that acceptance. So now you're so now there's no longer any personal jurisdiction, right? So all that's left is subject matter jurisdiction, because that's your right to lands in your territory and to own it yourself, right? With both rights, right? Right of ownership and right of possession. So that's the next one, right? So the injury only comes if the person that is supposed to do something doesn't do it. So this goes for the government and for the person that's in possession of those lands. So if David gives me a deed of release and everything and it's the way it's supposed to be, and I can't say, okay, fuck no, he made it wrong this way, so that's null and void, right? If it's justifiable, there's nothing I can do about it. I have to release David. And just because I don't send him a confirmation of release doesn't mean that David's not released. Right? It's when I go and try to force David to do something now, after I've gotten that release, that I've injured David. Right? So once you've done that release and everything, it's when the government comes and tries to force a bill of equity on you, is when that injury happens for the corporate person. Now let's look at the other trust, because remember, there's two trusts and there's two different people, two different capacities to them. There's two different holders. So the land, right, if you're claiming provincial land that the province is holding, then guess what? They're the same person. But what happens if it's somebody in fee simple that's holding 500 acres of land that you want? Well, now they're bound by the fee simple, because fee simple, right, they chose to take those lands in abeyance and throw their money away on the chance that the donor is not going to come back and claim those lands. So the injury does not happen between you and that fee simple person until they don't accept that notice, right? So you've sent your stuff all into the government, and now you've released your corporate person, but they haven't given you a confirmation. You're still free. So you're now in the capacity of a remainder man till you vest your lands. So these are a vested right. So it is your right. There's nothing they can do about it as long as you do the proper things and do that action, right? So you've now vested your corporate person. They cannot say that you're a corporate person and that you're in the capacity of equity, because you're not. There's no more equity, so common law must take its place, right? So now they're forced to see you as the remainder man, which gives you the right to vest your estate in reversion and remove it. So you claim from the tenant, and all the tenant has to do is take that to court to give it to you, and they've complied with it. Right? So the issue comes now that your writ of entry that you give to that tenant, he's going to ignore it because he doesn't understand what fee simple is. That's obvious with what we're showing on Facebook and everywhere, right? Even the police don't even understand what it is. And I wish I would have recorded that last trial. But anyway, so the real injury comes because that the tenant holding the land is going to be ignorant. So you got to make a claim against the tenant who holds the land. So because he's ignorant, he got that land by license by the government. So you name them you have to name them both, right? And it even says that in the law of uses and trust, right? You have to make your claim against the fulfier and the decisor, right? The ones that are injuring you. And it just so happens that the fulfier is also the government that must give you that deed of the confirmation of release, right, of your corporate person, and give you your ownership rate for the shares to that corporation, right? Because